All right, so let's look at this next argument that the anti-cremation people use. This is it in a nutshell. God uses fire as punishment. So if God sees someone sinning and he uses fire to punish that person, then that means that, we shouldn't use cremation because God has reserved it for punishment. This is one of those passages that they'll use to make this argument. This is Genesis chapter 19, when God punishes Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot's rescued, actually Lot and his wife and his 2 daughters, but his sons-in-law or future sons-in-law, they are not convinced. So there are 4 people who are going to safety. And then we get to verse 23 in Genesis 19. The sun had risen over the earth when Lot came to Zoar. It talks about him escaping and the fire's coming, and he, in verse 28, he looks down towards Sodom and Gomorrah, toward the land of the valley, and he saw, and behold, the smoke of the land ascended like the smoke of a furnace. Thus it came about, when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities which Lot lived. The sun had risen over the earth when it came to. Okay, so they'll use this passage. They see these people from Sodom and Gomorrah. They're horribly sinful people, and God uses fire as a punishment. They'll even use Numbers 11 has the story of the people complaining to Moses about what they have to eat and all the things that they're going through. Verse 1, now the people became like those who complain of adversity. When the Lord heard it, his anger was kindled. The fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some of the outskirts of the camp. The people therefore cried out to Moses. So here are the people complaining. The Lord hears those complaints, and they're on the outskirts of the camp. God sends fire, consumes that. Doesn't specifically say that God burned people, but I can assume that some people were in that fire, not just their belongings. And that is because God was punishing them with fire. That's what they'll say, those anti-cremation people. They'll even go to number 16, the rebellion of Korah. If you aren't familiar with that story, Korah and a bunch of the leaders team up together. They confront Moses and Aaron with their list of complaints. About halfway through verse 3, Korah starts with his speech. You have gone far enough. He's talking to Moses and Aaron. You've gone far enough, for all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? And then Moses, he's like, come on, man. Moses heard this. He fell on his face. He spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, tomorrow morning the Lord will show who he is, who's holy, and he'll bring him near to himself, even the one whom he will choose. He will bring it near himself. And so the next day comes, and what happens? And so what happens is the next day they do come together. And so there's this little contest ceremony where these men who are supporting Korah and this rebellion, they each take their censer, they put their fire on it, they lay incense on it, they stand in the doorway of the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. And so the congregation is watching what will happen. And the glory of the Lord appeared to the congregation, and starting Numbers, verse 20 in chapter 16, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them instantly. And they fell on their faces and said, oh God, God of the spirits of all flesh, when one man sins, well, you're going to be angry with the entire congregation. God's going to destroy them all, right? And then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to that congregation, saying, get back from around the dwellings of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And Moses arose, went to Dathan and Abiram and the elders of Israel following him. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, depart now from the tents of these wicked men. And we're going to skip the part where the ground opens up and swallows the supporters and families and tents and belongings of Korah's supporters. Go right to verse 35, which they will use. Fire also came forth from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense. They're going to use this story and say, see, God uses fire to punish. They'll also use the story from the Leviticus 10 of the priests Nadab and Abihu, who were consumed with fire from God for their sin. Or the warnings from Leviticus 20 and 21 dealing with certain sexual sins where the guilty are burned with fire. They even have a New Testament passage like this one from 2 Peter, starting about halfway through verse 5, chapter 3. It says this: "It escapes their notice that by the word of God the heavens existed long ago, and the earth was formed out of the water and by the water," verse 6, "through which the world at that time was destroyed, being flooded with water," verse 7, "but by his word the present heavens and earth are being reserved for" what? "For fire, kept for the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men." So these anti-cremation people will use these scriptures to say that God uses fire to punish people. And indeed, God did use fire to punish people. And their conclusion is going to be that, well, if it's in the Old Testament and it's in the New Testament, then we can apply it to our lives today. And they'll say that God is consistent, same yesterday, today, and forever. He uses fire to punish the ungodly. So their conclusion is if you cremate someone or if you endorse cremation, basically you're saying that you're volunteering to accept God's punishment and be treated like a wicked person. That's right. Because you're using fire and because God has said that he's going to burn people who are sinful, then if your body is burned, you have been sinful. Basically, this is just a guilt by association argument. Think about this for a minute. Let's be logical with this argument. God punished lots of people in lots of different ways. Why did he choose to put these people to death through fire? Don't know. God used fire as a punishment because maybe they were heinous crimes. But remember that the order of what happened in these scriptures is this. This is the thing you've got to remember. The first thing that happened is the people sinned, and then God destroyed with fire. That's the order. The people sinned, then God destroyed with fire. The order is not, if anything is destroyed by fire, sin must be involved. Don't let anyone try to convince you that just because fire is involved with cremation, that sin is in the equation. It doesn't work out that way. That's not logical. Don't fall for that trick. Hey, don't skip forward. You've only watched video number 10 out of the 17 videos in the series on cremation. So go on ahead, wait to the end of this video. You can link to the other 16 videos, watch them one at a time in a playlist, or you can watch them grouped together in videos of about 3 or 4, or you can even watch them all one sitting in one video. It takes about an hour. I really do appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. I'm Bob Balch with the That's Jesus channel. Have a great day and be blessed.